All right, so Kingsley is very, very interested in the odors of this crate, which is normal, like it's a new scent. But if I pull on the leash, you can see she's not really compliant with it. So we're gonna go back. We're gonna talk about the rowing we talked about last time because this is super important. It's a super important concept. The more I pull on the leash, the more she fights it, the more committed she can become to fighting it. Um, and it becomes almost a habit to resist that, right? So some dogs really enjoy the challenge of trying to overcome us on the leash, and other dogs it's just a necessary step they have to go through to get what they want, right? But whichever the case, this sustained pressure serves only to frustrate the dog and usually the handler, right? So I don't want to live there. I don't want to stay there very long. Good girl. And you can see right there was a little bit of where that comes from because when I took the pressure off the leash, when she was leaning against it, when she was fighting it, I just took the pressure off and then she just turned around and came to me. And this is the heart of the rowing idea, right? By fighting her, I sort of push her into committing to fight with me. So we're not going to do that. We're not going to keep this steady pressure. So I tried a lot of ways to explain this over the years. And the one that seems to work the best is just this idea of rowing. So what I do is I tend to, keep my hands about, 8 to 10 inches apart on the leash. I do find that two hands tends to change the character of the pressure in some subtle way that makes dogs a little bit more responsive to it than just one-handed, but you can do it one-handed if you need to. And again, remember, we want to keep to the side, right? Boom. Yeah, there you go. So another thing about this is that if I'm on the side and I'm rowing, I can actually get that leash, that change that elevation of that leash in the process. And it even does a little bit for angles too. So like right here, yeah, good girl. Good girl, yeah. Yeah, good girl. Yeah, good. So give her a lot of love, a lot of rewards for being with me. Yeah. So it's just like I said, like you're rowing a boat, right? You're gonna let the arms go out, bring them down and back in. So we're making a circle motion, right? And what this circle motion does is creates a rhythmic pressure for the dog, and it keeps us doing the right thing. Yeah, regardless of what the dog does. So we get into a pattern, we get into a habit, and we don't have to use. So earlier versions of leash pressure that I've taught involve waiting for the dog to do something specific, like relax or something like that. And it requires a lot of observation. Yeah, good girl, on the part of the handler. And I don't. The truth is, all of that was somewhat unnecessary. What we just needed to do was give the dog a clearer message. Yes, good. And keep them from getting in a position where they fight against the leash. Yeah, good. So obviously, these are low value distractions right now. Yeah, good girl. So we'll try and, increase the value of distractions now, create a little bit more of a intense response to practice. Good, good. So again, it's super important as I roll this ball. I don't want, oh, yes, good girl. I don't want this leash to hit any harder than it has to. So again, I just adjusted my feet and still just rowing again. Yeah, good girl. Good girl. Good girl. So I don't want this leash to hit any harder than it has to. Yes, good. Yeah, good girl. Yeah. So again, one of the other things that rowing does is it allows us to soften the whole thing because it's not a steady pressure. It's not a hard like because in constant flux, we can sort of adjust how hard we pull back. We're used to adjusting and sort of, well, it's almost like riding a wave. Like there is a feel that you develop for it, but you can just start with an automatic motion. Yeah, good. Yeah, good girl. Yes, good girl. And lots of reward for coming back in. Yes. Yeah, good girl. Yes. Good girl. And so, like right there, you see what's happened? Loose leash. Yes. Good girl. One of the things that happens a lot when we don't row is we feel like there's this illusion that happens. The dog is pulling this way, I'm pulling this way. And it feels like if I give the dog any slack, they're going to just charge forward. And sometimes that's true, but more often than you realize, the dog is only leaning into the leash to avoid losing ground. And if we give them slack, they'll relax. Like we're almost pushing them into resistance. So, like you just saw that happen right there, that I just rode a few times and then I just let the leash hang loose and see what happens. Yeah, good. Good. Well, what a good girl, yes. Good job. Let's try it with the tug toy now. Yes, good. Good girl, yes. Yeah, good. See if she'll take some treats. Nope. Good girl. Yes, good girl. Yeah. So it's important to be consistent and to practice this. Again, the mistake that most people make is they practice this outside. They with any strong distraction, right? Before you deal with the big things like squirrels or you know cars or kids on bicycles or whatever, before you deal with the big things, if I can't get her to ignore a thrown toy or a thrown ball in a relatively controlled environment, if I can't get her to respond to that quickly and sort of cleanly, I'm never going to get her to respond in the presence of one of those high value things, right? If you can't lift 100 pounds, there's no way you're lifting 150 pounds, right? It's just that simple. So we start with the lower weight and we keep adding weight to it until we're ready for those big things. So a lot of times people they rush it. So get this first, get the ability to get the dog to respond to low level pressure, low level distractions, excuse me. And then you start adding more intense distractions as we move along. Yes, good. You want to create a habit of this pressure, getting the dog to sort of stop in their tracks. Yes. Yes, good. Yes. Good. Yeah, good girl. So again, I like to keep my hands, I like to have the two-handed thing. Um, it works best if you're going to the side, and that creates kind of, again, that will create that lower elevation too. But you can do it with one hand like so. I'm actually doing two hands still, but really the left hand is doing all the work. And of course, remember, if you're outside, you want to secure the leash with a good anchor grip. I can be a little more comfortable in here because if I lose the leash, it's bad because she learns that she can escape the leash, but it's not bad in the sense that she's not going to get hit by a car or something like that. So I can be a little bit more casual with my leash grips in here. Um, But if you think you're in a situation where she's going to really fight you, make sure you have a good anchor grip. Good. Yeah, good girl. Yeah, good girl. Good girl, yes. All right, so that's just a little bit more on rowing. Real important part of that shear system. Maybe the most important part. Like that's the magic, I think. Everything else is setting up to support the row. Um, get that down. Like with the other features are there. They just make it possible for you to do this effectively. If your feet aren't set, if you're not aware of angles and elevations, the row doesn't work as well. All of those other elements support the rowing idea, right? So that's your row. Yeah, good. Good girl, yes. All right. So that's it for now, guys. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Come on, Kingsley. Let's go.